into this space with us. So Hala will be guiding embodied practices, some further reflection, some opportunity to continue to integrate what we heard in the last hour and what we are holding in and beyond this space. Hala is an incredible somatic movement practitioner and healer, trained clinical therapist, and we're grateful to have her in space with us. And I will hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be in space with you and to be able to take all the wisdom and inspiration that Tiffany brought and do some integration and reflection and process in our bodies. So that's my intention. Just to locate myself in this work for a moment. I'm originally from Beirut, Lebanon, and we moved here to the United States when I was 3 years old. And I often say I think I became a trauma specialist because there's a little girl in me that just wants everyone to get along so they stop fighting. And right now in particular, we are seeing this in the culture, with the spotlight just being on the pain and trauma in the Middle East. I'm also raising multiracial children. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. My kids are Black, Jewish, and Arab. And so, in my own nervous system, I feel like I'm holding the world in a particular way. And also watching my children go through the schooling process, and raising children that have enough language to say that to me. My younger son always says to me, Mom, school's broken. School's broken. I'm like, I know, baby, I know, right? And I've been working with educators for the last 10, 15 years, going into schools and educational spaces to focus on how do we build a culture that is trauma-informed and equity-centered, but ultimately this language of apocalyptic and subversive, like how do we hospice the old systems while we're inside those systems? And that's very much what I was reflecting on as I was hearing Tiffany speak, because I imagine a lot of you are inside of these dying systems. And a lot of folks choose to leave in order to preserve their life. And I'm really curious about how we nourish folks who are inside of those systems, because we need you all. Like, we need you all to figure out how to be well. So, and as I reflect on the data that Tiffany shared, right? So that the schooling data showed kiddos were doing well, but their bodies knew. Our bodies know, right? And so what I think is exciting about that is that our bodies know. And so there is technology that our ancestors knew that help preserve our bodies inside of structures of violence so that we can reclaim our capacity to imagine something new. Right? I heard one of you say, like, imagination is not my strong suit. Well, one of the definitions of trauma is that it's a loss of imagination. It is a loss of imagination. And it is really hard to be inside systems that are traumatic and be filled with cortisol and adrenaline and be in urgency and having to respond to crisis. How do we pivot our nervous systems inside of that to moments of generativity and creativity and imagining? And that's work I'm really interested in doing, because I do think we can find ways inside of our own nervous systems to figure out how to do that generative work inside those systems. And that's the inquiry I'm curious about. And I think all of us have different answers to that inquiry based on our own social location, what we have inside our own bodies, right? We all have different roles to play in this biodiverse ecosystem of hospicing the current systems. And I'm reading Hospicing Modernity. I don't know if this is on anybody's radar. And so a really beautiful book. And I want to start by uplifting a quote from this book, right? That very much echoes what we just did, right? We are living off of expired or expiring stories. Stories that expire can no longer dance with you. They are lethargic or stuck. They can't move things in generative ways anymore. right? And this is from Vanessa Machado de Oliveira. And so what does it mean to start to tell new stories collectively together inside of our organizations, inside of our communities, inside our own bodies? So that's going to be our exploration for today. I want to acknowledge that some of you might be in spaces where it's difficult to be embodied, right? You might be in the middle of your workday, and I'll say, great, you get the advanced course, because ultimately what we're trying to figure out is how can we be doing this inside of our organizations, right? So we don't need to be on a retreat in the, on the beach, although I highly recommend that too. I highly recommend that we find ways to be in ritual space, that we get to be in liminal spaces together, because we often need that refuel to do that, right? So we can come back and figure out how to be present inside of these systems. So I want to invite you to take a moment and check in right now. And if closing your eyes draws you a little deeper into yourself, allow them to close. If letting your eyes be open is more grounding, please do that. And I want you to reflect on what might be percolating inside of you so far. I mean, there was so much Tiffany said that is provocative, disruptive, and I say that in the most creative, generative way. So what is being stirred up? What is with you in this moment? In this moment? Inspiration, confusion, grief, hope. What is with you in this moment? And I'm going to invite you to type into the chat 3 words that describes what is with you in this moment. And the words can be, I don't know, because sometimes we're feeling disconnected and overwhelmed. So one of the things you might notice as we share is that often we are holding things that might feel opposite to each other, right? We are complex beings, and we can hold despair and hope at the same time, right? We can hold grief and joy at the same time. And part of being able to be integrated in our mind, bodies, and heart is holding the complexity of what it means to be human. And part of, in my humble opinion, being a part of imagining what education looks like, which is tied to our liberation, means holding that complexity. Because guess what, y'all? We don't go from systems of domination to liberation in like one step. We have to go through a whole awkward adolescence of change. It's super uncomfortable. And I think that when we get good at being with discomfort, and when we can be discerning about the type of discomfort that is about change, or the type of discomfort that's about stuckness, it can change that relationship. The thing that I often see inside of organizations that want to change culture is that when we don't recognize the discomfort of growth from the discomfort of stuckness, we risk turning against each other inside of wanting to have that change happen, right? And so as I take us into a little bit of a practice in our bodies, that's going to be the invitation, is how are we holding discomfort inside of ourselves? And how are we being discerning about the type of discomfort we want to move towards? Because moving towards that can be generative, right? So just like the analogy of childbirth, I had this experience when I was birthing my second child, who was much bigger than my first child. That is a relevant detail, right? And the first one came in quite easily as far as, childbirth goes. So I was very confident about number 2. And as I am starting to feel this need to push number 2, the intensity is much stronger than number 1, much stronger. And so I start to notice that to cope with that discomfort, I try to imagine holding the baby in my arms. I try to imagine what I want, right? Which sounds like a good idea, except every time I would go to the imagining, I would literally feel the baby going back up into my body. And at one point, my midwife says, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm imagining my baby." She goes, "You need to go there." And she points to the place where I thought I might die if I felt it. And I literally thought, I have to do that thing I tell all my students to do. I have to go towards the discomfort. Otherwise, I do not get to birth the thing I want to birth. And so I had to turn towards the thing that scared me the most, because I knew from somebody I trusted that was actually the pain of transformation. Right? Because I'm not suggesting, because what systems of domination say is be uncomfortable, just dissociate, right? This is normal. So again, we want to be discerning with the kind of discomfort that we want to be with, right? And so I went towards the thing that scared me, and then I got to have the thing I was imagining. So how do we do the beautiful work of imagining and the difficult work of knowing the kind of discomfort we need to be with, and how do we support each other inside of that rather than turn against each other? Because these systems of domination and separation and white supremacy and patriarchy live in our nervous systems. And even regardless of our own race and our own identities, we carry them in different ways, absolutely, right? And we're all complicit in different ways, and we all have opportunities in different ways. Some of us are leaning into our ancestors for wisdom and liberation, and some of our ancestors were the oppressors, right? And so it's complicated, right? Our ancestral work, right? So I also love to think about that we are the future ancestors. And what are we collectively imagining into being? And I think about the words of Michelle Alexander, who wrote The New Jim Crow, right? Civil rights litigator turned theologian. And she said the reason she left law and went into theology is because she knew that the change that we want has to be spiritual one. It can't just be policy change. And she also said what we are trying to do now, even our ancestors didn't do. Nobody historically has figured out how to all be together with our differences intact, right? And so that also brings me hope, because I also know that we're trying to do something that's never been done. So with that, I'm going to invite us to move into about 15 minutes of embodied practice. And everything can be done in a chair if that's more accessible in your body and in the space that you're in. And if you want to stand for part of it, I'm going to invite you to do that if that's available to you. Okay. Everything that I'm inviting you to do, I can't see all bodies. So please listen and filter my words in a way that makes sense in your body. You might be still the whole time and just listening to the words and imagining movements. Or you might be choosing to move in the way that I'm inviting you, okay? So if it's available to you and you want to stand, I will invite you to stand. All right, so I'm going to try to raise my voice, and if you're not able to hear me from here, please, one of our support team, let me know. So take your feet wide, again, in a chair or standing. And as usual, we always start with grounding, right? Grounding what's happening in our bodies, grounding ourselves here in space together. So I'm going to invite you to just shift your weight side to side a little bit and feel the bottoms of your feet on the earth. Notice if you feel grounded. Do you feel that your legs support you, that your feet support you? The opposite of feeling grounded is feeling like we're floating or spacey or fragmented. So no judgment, just want to check in with where we are. And then I'll invite you to place one hand on your heart, one hand on your solar plexus. And you might even feel a sense of grounding through this gentle pressure of your hands on your body. And start to tune in to your breath. And remember, for some of you, closing eyes drops you in. For some of you, keeping yourself oriented in your space is what allows you to feel a bit more safe and dropped in your body. Notice what your breath is doing right now. If your breath feels available to you, does it feel stuck or held? One of the key principles of finding embodiment is not judging where we are. So if you notice, I feel disconnected, I feel stuck, be with that. We can only begin exactly where we are. So exactly where you are is welcome right now. And if it feels good to start deepening the breath, start to find a rhythm of your breath. And we can start to add the arms here. So as you inhale, you might open the arms out wide. And as you exhale, bring it back in. So I want each of you to find this pulsing. It might be a very small pulse. Opening and expanding as you inhale. And then closing and moving in as you exhale. Find your own expression of this. You might find that you want to get really big. You might find that you want to titrate the movement and keep it really small. This rhythm of opening to closing, inhale to exhale, is the pulse of life. It is also the pulse of our healing, right? There's times in this work we feel open and expansive and generative, and times we feel more internal, maybe even stuck or need to isolate. And the more that we allow ourselves to be in a rhythm, the more that we can nurture this growth. That's one of the differences between schooling and education. Schooling does not honor rhythm. It's linear. It has one goal. It's not adaptive. Education understands that there's a rhythm and a pulse to life, stages of life, and it invites us to honor that wisdom. From here, we'll play with this movement. On the inhale, the right arm will rise, and just take a gentle side stretch as you exhale. And then the next inhale will bring you up. So again, you're adding your own signature to this, right? So I am here inviting a particular movement, and then you are allowing it to be yours. So expanding on the inhale, maybe you lean on the exhale. And notice that there's a part of you that's like, I have to do this right. A part of you that thinks that you have to look like how I look or move in a particular way. That's the way that we have internalized, right? These systems that tell us there's only one correct answer. The teacher holds all the wisdom. My job is to simply emulate that. And so how do I, as a teacher, disrupt that in my teaching? Do one more here. Good. And then pause here and just check in. Notice what you feel in your body now. Does your breathing feel different? Does anything feel a little bit more spacious? Or maybe getting into your body just as you confront how tired you are, how exhausted you are, your grief or your rage. Just notice. We'll do one more practice before we sit. And so we're gonna just let the shoulders shake out a little bit. Give it a sound. And if you want to jump a little bit or shake out the arms, give it a little sound here, like a deep exhale through the mouth. Bend and straighten your knees really fast. Shake out your legs and your thighs. And then inhale, let the arms reach. And if it feels good, let your knees bend and fold into your legs. If there's any pain in your back, just come up halfway. If it feels good to fold in, go ahead and fold in. And then slowly roll up. And then again, take a pause. We're going to make our way back into our seats if you were choosing to stand. We're going to do one more thing in our chairs. So I'm going to just move back to show you all. So just want to do a little simple stretch in the chair, and this will look different for all different bodies, but you're going to just cross your ankle over your knee. For most people, you'll start to get a stretch here in your hip. If this feels like too much or it hurts your knees, instead you can just extend one leg straight and maybe lean forward so you're getting a stretch. We're just wanting to do something that invokes a stretch in the body, that brings up a little bit of sensation in your body. So pick one of those postures, ankle to knee, And I want you to just move in towards your first edge of sensation. And so, what we're doing here is deliberately creating some discomfort to explore being within our bodies. Mm. I don't want you to go in so far that you're overwhelmed. Notice if that's your tendency. Where else do you do that, right? Or the opposite. Notice if you shy away from feeling because you're afraid it's going to be too much. So get curious, find that place where you're with the sensation. And then our work is to bear witness onto the sensation and stay in our bodies as we are with this discomfort. And again, if it's not a sharp or shooting pain, this is likely the discomfort of a stretch that is good for you, right? So, can you stay connected to a sense of grounding while you're noticing the discomfort? Can you stay connected to your breath? Can you be uncomfortable and okay without your body going into fight flight state? Can you also remember that at any point you can come out of this if it starts to feel like too much? But the curiosity right now is about cultivating our capacity to be embodied while we're uncomfortable. Mhm. So I'm going to be quiet for about 30 seconds. Again, the invitation is to stay in your body, stay connected to grounding and breath as you're feeling the sensation in your hip or wherever you feel the sensation. Good. One more deep inhale here and then sigh it out. Ah. And then release, uncross your legs, maybe shake it out a little bit. And then we're going to switch sides. Go to the other side, ankle to knee, or you extend the legs straight. And then just go in towards that first edge of sensation in your body. And the thing I always like to say when I take folks through somatic practices is that whatever habits you have in these practices, they're probably a mirror for you of habits you have in your life. Sometimes that's good news, like, and sometimes not so much, right? So notice, do you get self-critical? Do you get distracted really quickly? Do you dissociate? Do you overdo? No judgment, right? No judgment. We want to stay in curiosity because that self-knowledge allows us to be in choice about how we want to show up in this work. So, once again, just a few more deep breaths here. The inquiry is, can I be present with this discomfort? What supports me to be present? And this reminds me of that phrase that Tiffany brought up. How do we move beyond the aesthetics of wellness? Right? It's not how it looks, what you're doing in your body, but what are you actually feeling? How are you being inside of this shape? We'll take two more deep breaths here. Good. And then slowly release, uncross your legs. And then just pause for a moment, find a comfortable position. You might lean your back against your chair here. You might close your eyes, or you might find something to gaze at. And now I want you to check in again and notice what is emerging in your body. And as we reflect on this concept of schooling versus education, that schooling is really about what we are doing, and the cost of that doesn't matter, right? Education is about how we are being inside of that doing. Education is about honoring our mind, body, and spirit. Education is about being an internal process. And so just check in with your own mind, body, and spirit, right? The ways that, again, we have all internalized these systems of schooling as we are trying to disrupt them. And so what does it feel like in your body to be invited to stay dropped into your being right now? Do you feel this urgency of like, I need more information, or what am I gonna do, right? Move on, Hala, keep talking, right? Or what if we get quiet? And I will say that as a student, this part always freaks me out, and I just want more PowerPoint presentations, right? I always am aware of, I just want my brain to be working. It's a little harder to drop in. So no shame if you're just like, hurry it on up. Notice, stay curious. Yeah, that's how it shows up. And I'm going to ask you a question right now that I want you to invite you to let wash through your body. And it'll be something that we then will take into some small group discussion. But I want to invite you to be with it just in your body for a moment, right? So the reflection is that in your process right now, what are you grieving, or what do you need to grieve? What do you need to grieve in your process as an educator and whatever role you're playing? What is your reaction to that? And what is this making space for? So don't get into your thinking too much right now. I want you to just let these questions wash through you. What am I grieving? What do I need to grieve? And just see what shows up in your body: images, memories, sensations, resistance, wanting to be distracted. In your process right now, what are you grieving? What do you need to grieve? What needs to get out of the way? Observe your reaction. Is it resistance? Is it relief? Observe that. And then what are you making space for? And again, allow the answer to come as an image, as a sensation. Notice if there's this need to be right or understand. We want to just be in this curious, generative space with these questions. What are you making space for? As we think about wanting to embody this shift from schooling to education, from systems of domination to systems of liberation. What do you need to grieve? What do you want to imagine into being? How does that feel in your body? And then from here, if you want to take pen to paper and write or draw or journal, see what emerges. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes just to see what emerges through a pen and to paper. All right. All right, welcome back, everybody. Apologies if you got like pulled out in the middle of a sentence, but I would love to spend a few minutes just hearing, like, if you want to share and uplift whatever emerged in your session. And you might notice that you are sitting with some different questions or new questions. And again, we don't have to rush to have all the answers, right? I think about, I think a lot of us have been quoting Bayo Akomolafe, times are urgent, we must slow down, right? The times are urgent, we must slow down. And so with that in mind, I actually want to close with a 5-minute rest practice. And if you're like, great, I'm going to go answer emails while she does that, you really need this rest practice, right? But I also want to name that for some of our nervous systems, just being still can feel really activating. So I don't want to shame you if what you actually need to do during the rest practice is do a silent walk. Okay, so, ultimately, I'm the kind of person that has a nervous system that does not like to be still. And so I need movement to find stillness. And like the advanced course for someone like me is to actually be able to be still. So I don't want to shame you if stillness doesn't feel nourishing for you right now. I want to invite you to try it. And if it feels like it's just activating, maybe you do a walking practice, but we will do a full 5 minutes. And I'm going to do my new favorite thing is these things called binaural beats that help your brain um, find some settling. So I am going to be playing some binaural beats, and I will do this for we'll do 4 minutes so we don't end too late, and then I'll pull us out. So what I want to invite you to do is find a comfortable position. If you want to lean back, if you want to lay down, if you just want to close your eyes, whatever feels comfortable, cover yourselves in a blanket. And the invitation in the rest practice is to simply allow yourself to be supported. And I will talk a little bit. It's not ideal to talk over the audio. I know that, but I don't expect you to just know how to rest. It's not easy, y'all. We actually have to train our nervous systems to learn how to rest. So I'll give a little bit of guidance, but not too much, just because I know the sound can be tough. So find a position that feels comfortable. Just start to deepen your breath. And if you are laying down or on your back, you might begin to make your way up to sit. If your eyes are closed, you can allow them to open. I just want to thank you all for your time and your presence in this piece of the work. I know you get to continue in this creative inquiry. And I'll pass the mic back to you, Oriana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hala. Thank you. Thank you deeply. That was juicy and luxurious to be able to have moments of quiet and soothing and inward exploration in the middle of our day. Deeply appreciate it.